home to 1.3 billion members of the Catholic Church. We are joined by a guest now, Imam Yahya Pahlavinci, chairman of the Elumia European Muslim Leaders Council and Imam of Milan Central Mosque, Al-Wad in Italy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Imam, I want to just ask you, what's the feeling? Obviously, technically the Vatican isn't part of Italy, but what's the feeling around the country of Italy right now? He was obviously such a prominent figure in Rome and in Italy in general. What's the feeling going on?
Well, I can speak on, if I may say, maybe on behalf of the Muslim community in Italy and maybe worldwide. Of course, Pope Francis has reached out to all believers, as you just mentioned, and all citizens, but he was also a champion in dialogue with Muslims in the West, but as well in the East. If we remember his visits in Central Africa and then in Abu Dhabi signing the Human Fraternity Declaration, and again in Iraq and in Indonesia recently, in trying to promote the fraternity as a key word for cooperations, dialogue, and mutual understanding and peaceful coexistence. So having been such a champion, of course, also the Muslims in Italy and worldwide are very sad and pray for the soul of Pope Francis as a natural emotion of brotherhood and of spiritual closeness.
Yes, Imam, you obviously mentioned his importance behind interfaith dialogue. How significant was that for being the leader of the Catholic Church? And obviously, this is something going to be looked forward at his successor. What do you think of Pope Francis's way of leading things in regards to that?
Well, I think that his message and his action is very significant, as you just said, because in the West, and even, if I may say, among Christians, there was a certain ignorance on what is the universe of beliefs and faiths and different religious pluralism. While Pope Francis, being consistent with the example of the life of Jesus and of the message of the Gospels, he reacted to any kind of fundamentalism or radicalism or abuse of religion for hatred and violence, and promoted this culture of dialogue and brotherhood, which actually I think was a very inspired action if we think of all the negative violent situations we have witnessed in these recent years worldwide, between radicalism, terrorism, revolutions and hatred and conflicts going on. So he in some way inspired peace through fraternity and doing concrete actions, also in somehow respecting diversity, even among different religious communities and beliefs.
Imam, how do you view his outlook on modern issues? That includes, obviously, as we've talked about, interfaith dialogue, but also things like climate change, like even AI, the dangers of AI. How do you perceive the way he went about in tackling these issues?
Well, I think he had a very special approach, trying to, if I may say, combine the grammar of a theological Jesuit training, of course focusing as a Christian religious representative, but trying to be open to understand and to react or to find common ways to discuss on new challenges such as technology, modernity, or even challenges, as you mentioned, on climate change. But I would also add poverty and also his wish to increase disarmament, which is, of course, one of the situations that then develop in conflicts and war. So I think he was very also practical and close to these challenges, and he found ways to try to combine approaches that, of course, were coming from a religious authority, but were open to try to have a honest dialogue, open-minded dialogue, even if it was critical or proactive.
Imam, you've mentioned this briefly prior, but in what ways did Pope Francis's visits to Muslim majority countries, such as Indonesia, such as Iraq, influence the perception of the Catholic Church within the Muslim world?
Well, again, I think it has influence because we were probably coming by a very close minded East-West confessional identity mindset. While I think one of the challenges is really to in every place try to manage unity in diversity, and so to recognize and respect Christianity through Pope Francis' action and presence and visits was also a discovery for the Muslim world and for Muslim believers and citizens of a different approach, but always, if I may say, a closeness towards holiness, sacredness, and value-oriented life. So I think it was a bridge opener and, of course, a peace maker as well, and which is also part of the added value that he managed to express even in the Muslim world in these difficult times.
Thank you very much, Imam Yaha Palavinci. Please stay with us as we move to our correspondent and anchor, Joshua Barnes, to give us more updates on reactions. Joshua.
World leaders, but we have some more coming in. I want to start with Javier Milei, of course, the leader of Argentina, the country that Pope Francis is from. His message is long, but I will briefly...
I do apologise, we seem to be receiving some technical issues in regards to Joshua there. Imam, I want to come back to you. How did Pope Francis's emphasis on humility and service resonate with people, not just from Catholicism, but from worldwide? You've mentioned the work that he'd focused on poverty and the less fortunate before. How does this resonate with people?
Well, very much, but I would say in this case maybe much more in the West, where probably there is a different kind of culture of success in life, of egoism, and so to have such a leader so influential, but being also very concretely open and humble and simple, if I may say, even in his language, was something that has probably surprised and I think influenced Christians and Westerners to reframe their idea of a leader and of course of a spiritual leader. So I think this is part of his success stories in trying to change the mindset, but also inspire a much more simple and humble and open-minded attitude in life towards the other interlocutors. of the same family or religion, or even of different religions.
Imam, when one thinks of Catholicism, one thinks of grand art, the Sistine Chapel, the stained glass windows, beautiful, big, grand, golden things, ornaments. Past popes have been laid to rest in three nested coffins, one of each of cypress, zinc and elm. Francis, however, has requested a single wooden coffin lined with zinc. What does this say about Pope Francis and what he stood for?
Well, I think it gives us the occasion for Christians, but also for other believers, and even for any citizen, to try to reframe the priorities and the proportions in life, and not having too much consumeristic luxury strategies as a fancy life, as a model for existence. And so he has given to Christians the example of poverty as the root of Jesus Christ's life. And in doing this, of course, he inspired also other believers and other citizens, and if I may say, even other politicians and political leaders worldwide, to be more natural and more honest and more reliable in each one of our responsibilities in life, and not to have a supremacy, arrogant attitude, trying to always be more rich or more successful, and in comparison to all the others. So I think it's again it's a consistent example of what also Jesus has taught to Christians, and has also a universal dimension that all believers and all persons could try to be inspired by.
Is this the one? Imam Yahya Pahlavinci, thank you. Please stay with us. We'll now learn a bit more about Pope Francis.